Rock bottom, the intricate sugar flower collapsed under Olivia Winter's fingers just as the kitchen timer blared through her tiny apartment. She bit back tears of frustration, surveying the disaster that was supposed to be her showstopper dessert. For tonight's partia, lavender-infused creme brulee with crystallized violets that now resembled a sad, beige puddle rather than the elegant creation she'd envisioned. Just breathe, she whispered to herself. Glancing anxiously at the clock, 7:30. Julian would arrive in 30 minutes, expecting her to be dressed and ready for his firm's annual gala, not covered in vanilla-scented failure and wearing flour-dusted sweatpants. At 28, Livia had once been the promising star of her culinary school, the one instructors pointed to as having that special touch with pastries. Now, 4 years later, she was assistant baker at Middleton's grocery, creating cookie platters and birthday cakes while dreaming of opening her own patisserie. The dream seemed increasingly distant with each passing month. Her phone buzzed with a text from Julian Porter, her boyfriend of 18 months. Car's coming at 8:15 sharp. Wear the blue dress. Important clients tonight. No hello. No how's your day. Just instructions as usual. She showered quickly, blow-dried her chestnut hair into submission, and squeezed into the form-fitting dress Julian had bought her last Christmas. It was beautiful but uncomfortable, much like their relationship. She thought Riley Dodd Julian arrived precisely on schedule, immaculate in his tailored tuxedo, dark hair slicked back, his cologne announcing his presence before he even knocked. He gave her appearance a critical once-over. The necklace is a bit casual for tonight, he remarked, referencing the delicate silver pendant her grandmother had given her. No matter, we're already cutting it close. The drive to the Westmore Hotel was filled with Julian's monologue about tonight's strategic importance, how the managing partners would be watching, how Senator Brentwood might make an appearance, how this could be his moment to secure the promotion he'd been angling for. Remember, he said, as they pulled up to the gleaming entrance, these people can make or break careers. Best behavior, live. The grand ballroom sparkled with wealth and influence. Olivia recognized faces from business magazines and local politics. Feeling increasingly out of place among women draped in designer gowns and diamonds that cost more than her annual salary, Julian circulated with practiced ease, his hand firmly guiding her from group to group. His introduction always the same. This is Olivia. She works at a grocery store. Not my girlfriend, Olivia. Not Olivia, who creates amazing pastries. Just Olivia from the grocery store, delivered with the slightest condescending smile that made her shrink a little more each time. During dinner, seated at a table with Julian's colleagues, conversation turned to career aspirations. Olivia has this cute little dream of opening a bakery, Julian announced, his tone carrying the indulgent affection one might use when discussing a child's fantasy of becoming an astronaut, though I keep telling her the failure rate for restaurants in the first year is over 60%. It would be a patisserie, actually, she corrected quietly. Focusing on French-inspired desserts with local ingredients, and she makes a great boxed cake for office birthdays. Julian interrupted with a chuckle that others at the table echoed politely. Heat rose to her cheeks. I develop my own recipes. I studied at Darling. Nobody wants to hear about flour ratios, Julian whispered, patting her hand dismissively before turning to the investment banker across the table. Now about that portfolio diversification strategy. Olivia excused herself to the restroom, fighting back tears. In the marble sanctuary of the ladies' lounge, she stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the diminished woman looking back. When had she become this person? When had she started believing Julian's subtle implications that her dreams were childish fantasies? Her phone vibrated with a notification, a memory from 3 years ago. A photo of her winning the regional pastry competition with her signature lavender honey and tremit. Her smile in that picture was radiant, confident, full of promise. When she returned to the table, Julian was deep in conversation with Elizabeth Hartwell, the elegant VP of marketing at his firm. Olivia approached. She caught the tail end of his comment, just a grocery store cake decorator with a recipe book. Cute hobby, really. The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. The room seemed to still around her as years of suppressed frustration crystallized into perfect clarity. Without a word, She picked up Julian's glass of expensive champagne and slowly, deliberately poured it into his lap. "Congratulations on your promotion, Julian," she said calmly as he sputtered in shock. "I believe this relationship has reached its expiration date." She walked out of the ballroom with her head high, ignoring the stunned whispers that followed. Outside, in the cool evening air, she kicked off her uncomfortable heels, called a rideshare, and felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Freedom. Rock bottom, Livia realized, as the city lights blurred past her window, was actually the perfect place to start rebuilding. The ascent begins the morning after the gala disaster. Olivia woke to 27 missed calls from Julian and a strange sense of lightness. She deleted his voicemails without listening and made herself a cup of strong coffee, sitting at her tiny kitchen table where just hours ago she'd been frantically trying to salvage her creme brulee. Day 1, she murmured to herself, opening a fresh notebook. On the first page, she wrote in bold letters, "Patisserie Winters," and beneath, "It's steps to make it happen." Step 1 was brutal but necessary. Financial reality. Calculating her savings against her rent, student loans, and basic necessities revealed the harsh truth: she had approximately 4 months of runway before complete destitution. Not enough to launch a business, barely enough to breathe. Olivia spent the day updating her resume and applying to every bakery, restaurant, and catering company in a 50-mile radius. By evening, her inbox remained empty except for an automated rejection from Bellamy's, the upscale restaurant where she'd hoped to at least get an interview. The next morning, she arrived for her shift at Middleton's grocery with renewed determination. Instead of mindlessly decorating sheet cakes with the store's pre-made frosting, she brought in samples of her own creations: miniature lemon tarts with thyme-infused shortbread and blackberry macarons with white chocolate ganache. "These are for the manager meeting," she told her supervisor, Mrs. Finch, a kind but traditional woman who'd been running the bakery department for 2 decades. "I thought they might enjoy something different." Mrs. Finch raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Don't get your hopes up, dear. Mr. Middleton likes his chocolate chip cookies just fine." 3 hours later, Mr. Middleton himself appeared at the bakery counter holding an empty plate. "Who made these?" he demanded, his bushy eyebrows furrowed. Olivia stepped forward, heart pounding. "I did, sir. My wife wants to know if you can make 2 dozen for her garden club tomorrow." She said, and I quote, "They're better than that fancy place downtown that charges $9 per macaron." That evening, Olivia stayed late, using the store's industrial kitchen to fulfill her first unofficial order, Mrs. Middleton's garden. Club led to 3 more private requests the following week. By month's end, Olivia had established a small but growing side business, creating specialty desserts for Middleton's regular customers. It wasn't enough to quit her day job, but it was a start and, more importantly, validation that her creations were worth paying for. On a rainy Tuesday in October, 6 weeks after the breakup, a woman with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun appeared at the bakery counter, studying the display case with critical eyes. "May I help you?" Olivia asked. "I'm looking for the person who made these." The woman replied in a French-accented voice, pointing to Olivia's raspberry rose financiers. "Today's special that Mr. Middleton had allowed her to feature? That would be me." The woman's piercing gaze swept over Olivia, taking in her grocery store uniform and flour-dusted apron. "I am Marguerite Laurent. I need 20 assorted petit fours for a private dinner this Saturday. My usual pâtissier has fallen ill." Olivia nearly dropped the tray she was holding. Everyone in the culinary world knew Marguerite Laurent, the formidable chef who had earned 3 Michelin stars for her restaurant, Mazin, before retiring to open an exclusive cooking school that accepted only 12 students per year. "Be honored, Chef Laurent," Olivia managed to say, "though I should mention, I work with limited equipment here." Marguerite waved her hand dismissively. "I care about taste and technique, not fancy tools. Bring samples to this address tomorrow at 4. She handed Olivia a crisp business card and left without another word. The next day, Olivia called in sick to Middleton's and spent 14 frantic hours in her apartment kitchen, creating 6 different varieties of petit fours. She arrived at Mazan precisely at 4. Hand shaking as she presented her creations to the legendary chef, Marguerite tasted each one in silence, her expression unreadable. After the final bite, she looked at Olivia for a long moment.
You're piping.
Needs work. The glaze on the chocolate is too thick. Your flavors, double quotes. She paused. Your flavors have potential. Raw talent without proper training. Olivia's heart sank. I understand. Thank you for the opportunity. I didn't finish. Marguerite cut in. I'm offering you a position as my assistant for private events. Part-time, evenings and weekends. You'll be underpaid and overworked. You'll hate me most days, but you'll learn more in 6 months than most chefs learn in 5 years. Stunned, Olivia could only nod. And you'll need to quit that grocery store job. The smell of commercial preservatives clings to your clothes. It's offensive. That night, Olivia revised her budget spreadsheet. Working for Marguerite plus taking on private clients would barely cover her expenses, but the opportunity was priceless. She gave her notice to a disappointed but understanding Mr. Middleton the next day. What followed were the most grueling months of Olivia's life. Marguerite was as promised, demanding, critical, occasionally tyrannical. She made Olivia remake pastries for the slightest imperfection, sometimes throwing entire trays into the garbage if the presentation wasn't exactly to her standards. Again became the word Olivia heard most often, sometimes repeating the same technique 20 times until Marguerite gave a curt nod of approval. But between the criticism came moments of invaluable knowledge, secrets of temperature and timing, flavor combinations passed down through generations of French pastry chefs, techniques that couldn't be found in any cookbook. During one particularly brutal 18-hour day preparing for a governor's fundraiser, Olivia's hands cramped so severely, she dropped a tray of chocolate eclairs. As she knelt on the floor, fighting back tears of exhaustion and frustration, Marguerite stood over her, arms crossed. This is where most people quit, the older chef said matter-of-factly. This moment, right here, Olivia looked up, expecting termination. Instead, Marguerite extended her hand. Get up, we start again. But first tea. Over rare cups of Earl Grey, Marguerite asked Olivia something no one had bothered to in months. Why pastry? What drives you? The question unlocked something in Olivia, her childhood memories of baking with her grandmother. The transcendent joy of creating something both beautiful and delicious. The dream of a space where people could experience moments of pure pleasure through her creations. Marguerite listened, then nodded once. Tomorrow you will bring me your signature recipe. Not what you think I want. Not what you've learned here. Your voice. I want to taste who Olivia Winters is. Night, despite bone-deep exhaustion, Olivia stayed up creating. Not the technically perfect French classics Marguerite had been teaching her, but something uniquely hers, a delicate honey cake layered with lemon curd and lavender buttercream, topped with crystallized wildflowers from her grandmother's recipe. When Marguerite tasted it the next day, something remarkable happened. The stern chef smiled. This, she said, is where we begin. By spring, nearly 9 months after the fateful gala night, Olivia had saved enough to rent a tiny commercial kitchen. Space where she could take on more private clients. Her days settled into an exhausting but purposeful rhythm, mornings and afternoons working on her own orders. Evenings assisting Marguerite. Midnight to dawn, experimenting with new recipes. She named her fledgling business Sugar and Spice Patisserie, creating a simple logo and business cards that she handed out at every event she worked. Word began to spread among Marguerite's well-connected clientele about the talented young pastry chef with the innovative flavor combinations. 1 year to the day. After she'd poured champagne in Julian's lap, Olivia received her first corporate. Erotic startup wanted 50 custom desserts for their product launch. The payment would cover 2 months of her commercial kitchen rent, as she prepared the order that night. Marguerite appeared unexpectedly, rolling up her sleeves without a word. You don't need to help, Olivia said, surprised. I know, Marguerite replied, expertly tempering chocolate. But even the best climbers sometimes need a hand on the steepest part of the ascent. Together, they worked through the night, and as dawn broke, Olivia realized she was no longer climbing out of the hole. Julian had helped dig. She was ascending toward something much greater than she'd initially imagined. Sweet success. 3 years after walking out of the Westmore Hotel, Livia stood in the gleaming kitchen of her own patisserie, watching the early morning light filter through the windows. The space, once a neglected corner cafe with peeling paint and ancient plumbing, had transformed into sugar and spice, a boutique dessert shop that had become the darling of food critics and social media influencers alike. "Boss, the delivery from Hartley Farms is here," called Nico, her 22-year-old assistant who had the talent to become a master pastry chef himself someday. "The strawberries look incredible this week." Livia smiled, remembering when she'd been the assistant, when standing in her own kitchen had seemed an impossible fantasy. Now she employed 3 full-time staff and 2 part-timers, with plans to hire more as their catering division expanded. "Perfect timing. Let's incorporate them into the Spencer wedding tasting this afternoon," she replied, already envisioning a strawberry rhubarb tart with vanilla bean custard. The morning unfolded in the choreographed rhythm that Olivia had come to love: the precise movements of baking, the familiar scents of butter and sugar, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful from raw ingredients. By 11, the display cases were filled with the day's offerings: honey lavender madeleines, chocolate orange tarts, her signature wildflower cakes in miniature form, and a rotating selection of French macarons that customers sometimes lined up around the block to purchase. At precisely noon, Penelope, her shop manager and dear friend, burst through the swinging doors from the front of house, waving her tablet excitedly. "Liv, you need to see this email right now." Livia wiped her hands on her apron. "Please tell me it's not another health inspector surprise visit. We just had one last month." "Better," Penelope grinned, dark eyes sparkling. "Remington Industries wants to hire us for their annual executive retreat. Full dessert service for 3 days, 80 people, at the Lakeside Resort. The budget," as she paused dramatically, "astronomical." Livia took the tablet, skimming the email with widening eyes. Remington Industries was one of the largest technology firms on the West Coast, known for sparing no expense for their top-tier talent. The figure at the bottom of the email made her momentarily dizzy. "This is more than our entire first year's revenue," she whispered. "I know," Penelope squealed. "And it gets better. They found us because the CEO's wife had our caramel sea salt eclairs at the charity gala last month and apparently wouldn't stop talking about them. They want a tasting scheduled ASAP." Livia mentally rearranged her calendar, calculating staffing, needs, and ingredient orders. A contract this size would allow her to finally purchase the specialty equipment she'd been eyeing for months. Maybe even start looking at expanding to a second location. "Schedule the tasting for Thursday," she decided, "and let's start brainstorming a menu that will blow them away." Later that evening, after closing the shop and sending her staff home, Olivia remained in the kitchen, experimenting with new flavor combinations for the Remington presentation. Marguerite had taught her that high-profile clients expected the unexpected classic techniques, with innovative twists that would make their event memorable. Her phone chimed with a text from Penelope. "Remington confirmed for Thursday at 3. Their events director will attend." "His name is Ethan Parker." Olivia froze, spatula mid-stir in a pot of salted caramel. Ethan Parker. Julian's former college roommate and best man at his failed wedding. The same wedding she'd walked out on last year when she discovered Julian had been cheating on her with his assistant for months. The memory still stung, though not as sharply as it once had. She'd received the wedding invitation 6 months ago, a peace offering Julian had claimed when he'd stopped by the shop. "We were good together once," he'd said with that charming smile that no longer affected her. "I'd like you there." She'd declined politely, citing a catering commitment. The truth was more complex. She'd finally recognized how toxic their relationship had been, how his constant belittling had nearly extinguished her dreams. Still, the small-town connections meant their social circles occasionally overlapped, and now Ethan Parker would be sitting in her patisserie in 3 days, potentially offering the biggest contract of her career. Did he know she was the owner? Would it affect the decision? Olivia took a deep breath, focusing on the caramel that needed her attention. If the past 3 years had taught her anything, it was that her work spoke for itself. This would be no different. Thursday arrived with perfect early summer weather, sunlight streaming through the shop's front windows and highlighting the special display Olivia had created for the tasting. She'd closed to the public for the afternoon, transforming the small seating area into an elegant presentation space with fresh flowers and crisp linens at precisely 2:58.
Oh.
The bell above the door chimed. Olivia smoothed her chef's jacket and stepped from behind the counter, professional smile in place. The smile faltered when she saw not just Ethan Parker, but Julian himself, along with two other executives she didn't recognize. Olivia Julian said, recovering first from the mutual surprise, "You work here?" Before she could respond, Penelope stepped forward smoothly. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to Sugar and Spice. I'm Penelope, the shop manager, and this is Olivia Winters, our executive chef and owner." The emphasis on owner wasn't subtle. Olivia silently blessed Penelope for her quick thinking. "Owner?" Julian repeated, his expression a complicated mix of disbelief and something else, perhaps regret. "For over 2 years now," Olivia confirmed, extending her hand professionally. "It's nice to see you again, Julian. You must be Mr. Parker. Thank you for considering us for your retreat." Ethan shook her hand, glancing between her and Julian with curious eyes. "The pleasure is ours. Your reputation precedes you. Carolyn Barrett is still raving about your desserts from the Children's Hospital benefit." "Carolyn Barrett, the CEO's wife?" Julian asked, clearly thrown off balance. "The very same," Ethan confirmed. "Shall we begin? I understand you've prepared a special tasting menu for us to consider." The next 90 minutes were a masterclass in professionalism. Olivia presented 8 distinct dessert concepts, each telling a story of flavor and technique. She explained her philosophy of using local, seasonal ingredients, the importance of balance between sweetness and acidity, and how each item could be customized for the retreat's various events. The executives were visibly impressed, making notes and occasionally exchanging glances of approval. Julian remained largely silent, watching Olivia with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. When they reached her final presentation, a delicate, the chocolate sphere that melted under warm vanilla sauce to reveal a center of passion fruit mousse, and caramelized hazelnuts, the oldest executive, who had introduced himself as Walter Remington, actually applauded. "Extraordinary," he declared. "Innovative without being gimmicky, sophisticated without being pretentious. Exactly what we're looking for." "I have to ask," Ethan said, leaning forward, "how did you build all this in just 3 years? It's impressive by any standard." Olivia felt Julian's eyes on her as she answered, "Determination, excellent mentorship." She smiled, thinking of Marguerite, who still called weekly to critique her latest creations. "Perhaps a moment of clarity that showed me what I didn't want, making room for what I did." "Well, whatever the catalyst," Walter said, rising too. His feat, the result, is remarkable. "We'd be delighted to have Sugar and Spice cater our retreat." As Penelope escorted the executives to discuss contract details, Julian lingered behind. "Olivia," he began, his voice lower than before. "This is not what I expected." "Life rarely is," she replied, gathering empty plates. "I always said you had talent, but this—" He gestured around the shop. "No, Julian," she interrupted gently. "You always said I had a cute hobby. There's a difference." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I was wrong, clearly." Paused. "Are you coming to the retreat to oversee things?" "Of course. It's my company, my reputation." She met his eyes directly. "My dream that I'm building one pastry at a time." After they left, Penelope rushed back in, waving the signed contract. They didn't even negotiate. A full asking price. Her excitement dimmed as she noticed Olivia's expression. "Are you okay? Was it weird seeing him?" Olivia considered the question carefully. 3 years ago, Julian's approval had seemed crucial to her happiness. Now, standing in her own successful business, having just landed a contract that would propel Sugar and Spice to the next level, she realized something profound. "It wasn't weird," she said finally. "It was clarifying." That evening, as she locked up the shop, Olivia paused to look at the small but growing empire she'd created. The elegant script of Sugar and Spice patisserie gleamed gold against the deep blue storefront. Through the window, She could see the photographs framed on the wall, her feature in Culinary Quarterly. The Best New Dessert Shop Award from the City magazine. Marguerite and her at the grand opening. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your success. You deserve it." Olivia smiled slightly but didn't respond. She didn't need his validation anymore. The sweet taste of success was validation enough. Bittersweet reunion. The lakeside resort lived up to its name. A sprawling luxury property nestled against pristine waters, with mountains rising dramatically in the background. Olivia surveyed the grand ballroom where tomorrow's welcome reception would take place, mentally arranging her dessert stations for maximum visual impact. "The lighting is perfect," she murmured to Penelope, who was checking items off their extensive prep list. "We'll set up the chocolate fountain here, with the berry display cascading down from this level." "Ms. Winters?" A deep voice interrupted. Her planning Olivia turned to find a tall man with warm brown eyes and a subtle smile. He wore a tailored suit that somehow managed to look comfortable rather than constraining. "Thomas Reed," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "CFO for Remington. I missed the tasting last week, but I've been hearing about your desserts nonstop from Walter." His handshake was firm, but not domineering. His manner refreshingly straightforward. Olivia noted the absence of a wedding ring and immediately chastised herself for noticing. "Mr. Reed, pleasure to meet you. I hope we live up to the hype." "Thomas." "Please," he insisted, "judging by what I saw in the kitchen when I passed by, you're exceeding expectations already. Those chocolate structures are remarkable." Olivia smiled, genuinely pleased by his observation. "The chocolate showpieces had taken days to perfect delicate architectural elements representing Remington's most successful product innovations." "I appreciate the attention to detail," Thomas continued. "Not many would research our company history for inspiration." "That's Olivia's superpower," Penelope chimed in. "She believes dessert should tell a story." An event coordinator appeared, pulling Thomas away to discuss seating arrangements, but not before he mentioned he was looking forward to tomorrow's reception. Olivia watched him leave, an unexpected warmth blooming in her chest. She hadn't felt that particular flutter since... Well, best not to think about that now. The next 48 hours would require complete focus. By midnight, her team had transformed the resort's commercial kitchen into a patisserie command center. Nico was applying the final gold leaf to 80 individual chocolate domes, while her newest hire, Gabrielle, piped delicate rosettes onto tiny cheesecakes. Olivia herself was completing the sugar work, pulling and twisting heated sugar into crystalline sculptures that would crown tomorrow's signature desserts. "You should get some rest," Penelope advised, noticing Olivia's third cup of coffee. "Tomorrow starts at 5 a.m. It's one more hour," Olivia promised, losing herself in the meditative process of creating something beautiful. When she finally returned to her resort suite, she found a small package outside her door with a note, a welcome gift for our most anticipated vendor, TR. Inside was a Buca rare first edition of The Art of Confectionery by the legendary French pastry chef Antoine Beaumont. Olivia gasped, carefully turning the fragile pages filled with hand-drawn illustrations. Such copies typically sold for thousands at auction. The gesture was thoughtful in a way that spoke of genuine appreciation for her craft. It wasn't showy or demanding acknowledgement. Julian would have made sure everyone knew about such an expensive gift, but simply perfect. Sleep came easier than expected. Her dreams sweet with possibility. The welcome reception began at precisely 6 p.m. the following evening. Remington's executives and their top clients mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, the conversation a pleasant hum beneath subtle jazz. Olivia supervised her team from a discreet distance, ensuring each dessert station maintained its picture-perfect appearance. Her signature creation for the even individual, dark chocolate spheres that melted under warm caramel to reveal a center of salted butter pecan mousse, was being served tableside to gasps of delight. "You've outdone yourself," came Thomas's voice from behind her. He had changed into a more formal tuxedo that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. "Tokyo delegation is practically fighting over the matcha pyramids." Olivia laughed, relaxing. slightly now that the initial service was underway successfully. Cultural customization. Japanese desserts traditionally aren't as sweet as American ones. Smart and talented, Thomas observed. Dangerous combination. Was he flirting? Before Olivia could decide how to respond, Julian appeared at Thomas's side, champagne flute in hand. "Tom, the Nakamura group is asking about the quarterly projections," he said, then acknowledged Olivia with a nod. "Everything looks impressive." "Thank you," she replied professionally. "We aim to exceed expectations." "Speaking of exceeding expectations," Julian continued, lowering his voice slightly, "I never properly apologized for how things ended between us." Olivia felt Thomas shift beside her, obviously realizing their connection was more complicated than professional acquaintance. "Ancient history," she said lightly. "We've both moved on to better things." Julian's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Indeed. Though I admit seeing your success has been ... enlightening. I clearly underestimated you." "Many people did," Thomas interjected. "Their loss. If you'll excuse us, Julian. I promised to introduce Olivia to some of our international partners who are interested in potential collaborations." With a gentle hand at the small of her back, Thomas guided her away toward a group of elegantly dressed executives. "Sorry for the rescue," he murmured. "He seemed to be making you uncomfortable. That obvious? Only to someone paying attention?" His eyes crinkled when he smiled. "So I wasn't lying about the introductions. The VP from our Paris office was asking if you'd consider a pop-up event during Fashion Week." The evening progressed like a dream. Olivia's desserts, earning effusive praise. Potential business connections forming with each conversation. Thomas somehow always nearby with perfect timing and genuine interest in her story. During a brief lull, she escaped to the terrace for fresh air, gazing at moonlight shimmering across the lake. The cool night breeze was a welcome respite from the kitchen's heat. "Mind some company?" Thomas asked, appearing with 2 glasses of water. "I'd welcome it," she admitted, accepting the drink gratefully. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before he spoke again. "So, ... you and Julian," Olivia nodded. "Almost 3 years ago now. He was my wake-up call in a way. How so?" She considered how to explain without sounding bitter. "Let's just say he helped me realize I was hiding in a relationship instead of pursuing what really mattered to me. And now you're here, running circles around everyone else in your field." "Not quite circles," she laughed. "More like ... elaborate pastry spirals." Thomas's laughter was warm and genuine. "I like that about you. You're brilliant but humble about it. Comes with the territory. Pastry has a way of humbling you 1 degree too hot, and hours of work can collapse in seconds. Life lesson in that, I suppose?" Their conversation flowed easily, moving from business philosophies to favorite books, childhood memories to travel disasters. Olivia couldn't remember the last time she'd connected so quickly with someone. "We should probably head back," she said reluctantly, noting the time. "Probably," he agreed, making no move to leave. "Or I could show you something spectacular." Choice, curiosity won. Thomas led her down a hidden path to a small dock extending into the lake. The view was breathtaking: mountains silhouetted against the star-filled sky, their reflection perfect in the still water. "The resort's best-kept secret," he explained. "I discovered it last year during a crisis conference call. Came down here at dawn just to breathe and found ... this." "It's magical," Olivia whispered, genuinely moved by the beauty. "Like your desserts," he said softly. "Beautiful and unexpected." Their eyes met, and for a moment, Olivia felt the world narrow to just this dock, this man, this perfect night. Then her professional instincts kicked in. "I should check on breakdown in the ballroom," she said regretfully. Thomas nodded, understanding. "Of course. But maybe we could continue this conversation tomorrow? There's a hiking trail that leads to a spectacular waterfall, if you can spare an hour before the lunch service." "I'd like that," she admitted. Back in the ballroom, Olivia found Julian directing the cleaning crew around her desert stations with unnecessary authority. "Careful. With those display stands," he was saying. "They're probably expensive." "They are," Olivia confirmed, approaching. "But my team knows how to handle them." Julian turned, his expression unreadable. Just trying to help. Excellent event, by the way. Everyone's impressed. Thank you. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. I saw you with Thomas on the terrace, and Olivia kept her tone neutral. Just ... Be careful. Office politics here can be complicated. She raised an eyebrow. I'm not part of your office, Julian. No, but he sighed. Look, I'm not jealous, if that's what you're thinking. Thomas is a good guy. One of the best, actually. I just ... I guess I'm surprised to see you moving on so completely. The comment was so absurd that Olivia nearly laughed. Julian, we broke up 3 years ago. Did you expect me to be pining away all this time? He had the grace to look embarrassed. Of course not. I just meant professionally. You've created something remarkable here. For the first time, Olivia detected genuine admiration in his voice, no condescension. No backhanded compliment hiding within. Thank you, she said simply. That means something, coming from you. Julian nodded, then reached into his pocket and handed her a business card. My sister is getting married next spring. She always loved your baking, even before all this. Would you consider meeting with her, as a favor to an old friend? The request was unexpected, genuine, and strangely healing. Julian was acknowledging her as a professional, as someone whose work had value. Have her call the shop, Olivia said. We'll take good care of her. After he left, Penelope sidled up beside her. Was that civil conversation I witnessed? With Satan himself? Olivia chuckled. He's not Satan, just a man who couldn't see past his own ambitions. Well, speaking of men, Penelope wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. Mr. Dreamy CFO couldn't take his eyes off you all night. We're going hiking tomorrow, Olivia admitted. Hiking? That's the most wholesome first date I've ever heard of. Approve. It's not a date, Olivia protested weakly. Keep telling yourself that, boss. Later, preparing for bed, Olivia found herself humming as she removed her makeup. The reunion with Julian had been surprisingly cathartic, not because she wanted reconciliation, but because she realized she'd finally truly moved beyond needing his approval or validation. Her phone chimed with a text from Thomas. Breakfast. At 7? Kitchen told me you're an early riser. Olivia smiled, typing back. Make it 6:30. Sunrise from that dock sounds perfect. Here. So I walked away from a relationship that diminished her. Tonight, standing confidently in her success, she felt ready to consider one that might help her soar even higher. The bitterness of her past had transformed into something unexpectedly sweet, a perfect flavor balance, just as she'd always strived. For in her creations asterisk, just desserts 1 year after the Remington retreat, Olivia stood in the expanded kitchen of Sugar and Spice's second location, supervising final preparations for what the local business journal had dubbed the networking event of the season. Remington Industries' annual Innovation Awards had become her most prestigious recurring contract. With tonight marking their 3rd collaboration, everything is perfect, boss, Nico assured her, now her head pastry chef, while she focused on business development. The signature desserts are ready for the reveal. Olivia nodded, adjusting her chef's jacket, custom designed now, with her name embroidered in elegant script. So much had changed in a year. A second shop in the financial district, a small but growing wholesale line in upscale grocery stores, and a cookbook deal with a major publisher. Olivia? Thomas appeared in the doorway, handsome in his tuxedo. After a year of dating, the sight of him still made her heart flutter. Cars ready whenever you are? Their relationship had evolved naturally from that sunrise hike through weekend getaways and quiet evenings discussing their dreams. Thomas had become her biggest supporter and most honest critic, the perfect combination. Just one final check, she promised.
Ow.
Making a last inspection of the dessert carts. The venue was spectacular. The grand observatory, with its glass ceiling, revealing a canopy of stars above. Olivia's team had created a celestial-themed dessert experience with constellation sugarwork and planet-inspired confections. As guests arrived, Olivia spotted Julian with his new girlfriend, a professor of economics he'd met at a conference. Their relationship now was cordially professional. Shed created his sister's wedding cake 3 months ago, a peace offering of sorts that had finally closed that chapter. Ladies and gentlemen, Walter Remington announced from the podium before. We present our Innovation Awards, We have a special announcement. Remington Industries is launching a culinary incubator program for underprivileged youth. I'm pleased to announce that Olivia Winters of Sugar and Spice will be our executive director. Applause filled the room as Spotlight founder Thomas squeezed her hand, pride evident in his eyes. Additionally, Walter continued, Olivia has been named Culinary Entrepreneur of the Year by the Chamber of Commerce. The news was supposed to be embargoed until tomorrow. Olivia gasped as Thomas grinned he'd known all along later. As guests enjoyed her celestial creations, Julian approached. Congratulations, he said sincerely. You deserve every accolade. Thank you, Olivia replied, genuinely appreciative. Was wrong about you, he admitted. I couldn't see your potential because I was too focused on my own path. We all have blind spots, she said graciously. What matters is learning from them. As Julian walked away, Thomas appeared with champagne. To the most remarkable woman I know, he toasted, who turned lemons into the most exquisite lemon curd the world has ever tasted. Olivia laughed, clinking her glass against his. Unexpected journeys. Speaking of journeys, Thomas said, suddenly serious, I have a question for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Thomas, she whispered, eyes widening. Olivia Winters, he said, dropping to one knee as nearby guests noticed and fell silent. You've shown me what it means. To pursue a dream with your whole heart. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? The ring was perfect, a delicate band with a cushion-cut diamond, surrounded by tiny sapphires that matched the blue of her eyes. Yes, she answered without hesitation. Absolutely yes. Applause erupted around them as Thomas slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her. Later that night, as they slow danced beneath the stars visible through the observatory ceiling, Thomas whispered, Happy. Olivia considered the question, thinking of her journey from that humiliated waitress to award-winning entrepreneur and now his fiancé to a man who valued her ambitions as much as his own. Perfectly so, she answered truthfully, like the best. Dessert complex, satisfying, and absolutely worth waiting for. The path hadn't been easy, but as Marguerite had taught her, the most exquisite creations often required the most precise balance of bitter and sweet. Looking around at the life she'd built, the business thriving beyond her wildest dreams, the love she'd found when she wasn't looking, Olivia knew. She wouldn't change a single ingredient in the recipe that had brought her here. Life had indeed served her just desserts, and they were sweeter than she could have imagined.